The penthouse apartment shimmered under a constellation of crystal chandeliers. Champagne flutes clinked, laughter rang out in practiced cadences, and the air was thick with the scent of expensive perfume and ambition. It was the annual soirée hosted by Richard and Victoria Thorne, the event of the social season where deals were whispered and status was silently affirmed. Victoria, draped in a designer gown worth more than some cars, surveyed her kingdom with a satisfied smirk. Yet, a knot of boredom tightened in her stomach. The conversation was the usual drone of stock portfolios and tropical vacations. She needed entertainment, a spectacle to break the monotony. Her gaze drifted to her husband, Richard, the formidable CEO, holding court by the grand piano. And then, the idea struck her, a malicious spark that curled her lips into a sly smile. Richard often spoke, with a strange mix of irritation and respect, about his office cleaning lady, Miss Clara. He mentioned her quiet diligence, the way his chaotic desk was always mysteriously ordered by dawn, and her profound, calming presence during their rare evening overlaps. Victoria had met her once, a tall, older black woman with kind eyes and hands that spoke of a lifetime of work. To Victoria, Clara was a prop, a fixture of the background. The perfect punchline. "Darling," Victoria purred, slinking over to Richard's circle. "We should invite your Miss Clara. The poor thing probably never sees such refinement. It would be a charitable act, don't you think?" Her eyes glittered with mock benevolence. The sycophants around them tittered nervously. Richard's brow furrowed, but Victoria's will was a force he rarely contested in social matters. A text was sent to the office manager for Clara's number. Another, in Victoria's perfectly manicured hands, was dispatched to Clara herself. "You've been so good to Richard. Join us for our party tonight at 8. Penthouse A, the Aurora Tower. Formal attire." She added a winking emoji, imagining the woman's panic at the words formal attire. The night wore on. Victoria had already begun the joke, whispering to her inner circle about the domestic experiment they were about to witness. "Can you imagine? Probably show up in a housekeeping apron," she sneered, eliciting hushed, mean-spirited giggles. They were a pack, waiting for the lamb to stroll in. At 8:45 p.m., the doorbell chimed. A hush fell as Victoria, with theatrical flourish, glided to open the door. "Our special guest has arrived," she announced. But the figure in the doorway was not the uncertain, out-of-place woman they had all anticipated. Miss Clara stood tall, regal in a stunning, simple ivory Kent-inspired gown that flowed like a waterfall. A single string of polished amber beads graced her neck. Her hair was braided into an elegant silver crown. She carried not confusion, but an aura of serene authority that seemed to quiet the very air. The cheap laughter died in throats. The smirks froze and melted away. Victoria's mouth went dry. "See Clara? You came. Good evening, Mrs. Thorne." "Thank you for the invitation," Clara said, her voice low, melodic, and utterly composed. Her eyes swept the room, not with awe, but with a quiet, assessing grace. It was Richard who broke the tableau first. "Miss Clara," he said, stepping forward, an unreadable expression on his face. "I'm surprised to see you here." "As was I, Mr. Thorne," she replied, a gentle smile touching her lips. "But I learned long ago that life often places us where we need to be, not always where we expect." The awkwardness was palpable. Victoria, scrambling to salvage her joke, gestured vaguely. "Everyone, this is Richard's cleaning lady." She emphasized the title like a weapon. A young, earnest tech entrepreneur, new money and less ingrained with old prejudices, was the first to approach. "That's a beautiful gown, ma'am. The pattern is incredible." "Thank you," Clara said. "It tells a story. Each block and color represents a concept: justice, humility, wisdom. My grandmother wove the original cloth in Ghana." Conversation stuttered back to life, but now it orbited her. People found themselves drawn to her calm center. Someone asked about her work, intending condescension. Clara spoke not of mops and dusters, but of restoring order, seeing the underlying structure of chaos, and the peace of a well-ordered space. She spoke with the wisdom of a philosopher, which, it subtly dawned on them, she might well be. Then, the billionaire venture capitalist, a man known for his brutal interrogations, asked her opinion on a recent, complex merger in the news. Clara listened, nodded, and then dissected the human element of the deal, the cultural clashes, the fear of the workforce, the erosion of trust, with such piercing clarity that the man was left staring, his financial model suddenly seeming incomplete. You see, she concluded softly, people are not balance sheet items. Clean a person's space for long enough, and you learn to read their soul. The same principle applies to reading a company. A profound silence followed. The joke had not just fallen flat, it had exploded in the face of its maker. Victoria stood isolated, her cruelty exposed under the new, unforgiving light of Clara's dignity. She was not the audience to a farce, she was a bit player in a lesson. As the clock neared 11, Clara gracefully prepared to leave. Richard walked her to the door, his CEO demeanor replaced by something resembling deference. I apologize, Miss Clara. For all of this. Clara placed a gentle hand on his arm. No need, Richard. I have cleaned your office for 5 years. I've read the drafts of your speeches, the early notes for your charitable foundation. I know the man you aspire to be is better than the circle you sometimes keep. Her eyes drifted to a mortified Victoria, who could not meet her gaze. Some people use mirrors to check their appearance. Others use people. Both can be revealing. With that, she left, leaving a transformed silence in her wake. The party ended soon after, not with a bang, but with a collective, shamed whisper. The guests departed not with gossip, but with introspection. Victoria's cruel joke had succeeded only in revealing her own smallness and unveiling a queen they had been too blind to see. In his study later, Richard Thorne stared out at the city lights. He understood now why his most innovative ideas often came the morning after Clara's cleanings. She didn't just tidy his desk, she cleared his mind. And his wife, in her attempt to mock, had inadvertently cleaned the fog from everyone's eyes that night. The real mess, he realized, hadn't been in his office. It had been in his living room, and it was a mess of prejudice and pretense that only the grace of an unexpected guest could finally sweep away.